And with that, we're live. What's happening, everybody? It's me, Robert Phoenix. Let me check my mic setting here. We're good. We got the USB lavalier mic pro 31B2 colon 0011 plugged in, ready for action. What's happening, everybody? Good to see you tonight. Well, I don't really see you, but in my mind's eye, I kind of see you, and I get to see your little pictures right there in the chat. So I do kind of see you. And some of you I actually know through physical sight, so I can put your picture to your body and complete the circuit. And others, well, I'll just fill in the gaps myself. So it looks like Claire is kind of sleepy tonight. So here's what I think I should do for Claire. I think I should just do like maybe how about this? Let's see what we have here for Claire. Let's see. Hold on. Why don't we do something like this? Claire, I think I may just play this intermittently throughout the show here. Just randomly, just to check in and make sure that you're still awake. So here we go. This is going to be for Claire right here. He's a nice dog. Oh, puppy. We got the little puppies. Little puppies. There you go. There you go. Wake up, Claire. Wake up, Claire. It's a Sagittarian moon. What can I say? We need a little levity with the gravity. One of my power animals. There you go. My dog. Hey, Christy, how are you doing? Good to see you. All right, Claire. Every now and then I'm going to break in. It's 11 minutes. I don't know what I'm getting. You may get a sweet little puppy yap, or you may get the Doberman Pinscher. In any case, we'll just check. All right, let's see who we have here. Let's see who we have here. Okay. Meow, meow, kitty poop. Meow, meow, kitty poop. Meow, meow, kitty poop. Integrity Karma, what's happening? Ms. Behaving 2 is here. There's my man, Steve. Mr. Thor at the door. Melissa Stanton's here. Hello. It's been a relaxing day. I'm glad. I'm glad. SJS. Early bird gets the worm. Best possible seed. What's going on, SJS? Good to see you. Road Trip is here again. 1981. What's going on? What's happening? Maya Rose. Maya, I promise I will get back to you. This week is a little bit better than the last couple of weeks. It's been kind of stacked. There she is. Christine Mose. I think I have to take away the black pill, the queen of the black pill title. I think that's gone. Christine is a woman with a purpose now. I'm going to give her the queen of the silver pill. That's what she gets. Gala Travelog, what's happening, Gala? Good to see you. There's my man, Ryan. Ryan, what's going on, brother? Good to see you. We got to catch up sometime. I was thinking about you this weekend. Mary Lee looks like she's out of her state of mourning for Nick Saban. What's happening, Mary Lee? Glemma Spank is here. What's going on, Glemma? Yes, I got to put this comment up. Please don't forget to hit like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. Thank you, Ryan, for reminding me. I appreciate that. Please do that. It helps with the algorithms. And one of these days, I swear we're going to get over 13K. I know it's going to happen. It'll happen before the end of 2024. That's my prediction. We will get over 13K before the end of 2024. And I'm going to be proven right. I like being proven right. Who doesn't like being proven right? Right? Let's see. Moon Sprout is here making dinner. Good. What do you have in Moon Sprout? My man, Thomas Jordan. He's here. What's going on, Tom? Good to see you. Jeff Rosen Videos. What's up, JR? Lisa Ann White, also known as Law for short. She's here with us. Think of Felice. Did you see where Tucker is in Moscow? And the meltdown is happening around. I can't stop laughing. Look, whatever you think of Tucker. I played this video. What was it on? Was it on the Wednesday show? I was on the Wednesday show. And Tucker was talking about how it feels to be in law enforcement, which I kind of know something about. It was like, what? What are you talking about, Tucker? What are you? Are you like CIA? And I said, Tucker made a little bit of a confession there. Made a little tiny bit of a confession. It was quite interesting, actually. But yeah, I think, look, whatever you think of Russia, I think Russia is in line with the World Economic Forum. I'm not going to get too much into my political beliefs here, but I think they're in line with the World Economic Forum. I think Vladimir Putin is not Lex Luthor. No, I don't. I don't think he's Lex Luthor. But I do think that he plays a role, just like all these other people do. And it'd be good to have an American journalist actually interview Vladimir Putin. Somebody who can actually answer a fucking question. Who else? Kabuki Theater. What's going on, Bo? Good to see you. Dory McLean is here checking in from the land of the painted sky. And then we're talking about New Mexico there. Dave Sullivan with us. Moniz Phoenix from the Phoenix fan. What's happening, Moniz? Coach Gillespie, where we go one, where we go all. Mega here. What's going on, Coach? Oh, yes. And you can buy me a cup of coffee at right there. Thank you, Tom, for reminding me. And for everybody that's bought me a cup of coffee, thank you for doing that. And also, I appreciate your kind words. It means a lot to me. So thanks again. Use memorandum. JJ's in the house. Let's see what Claire. We know Claire's here. We're going to keep her awake. Claire, I'm going to bust that dog video on you at some point again in the show, but I won't give you any clues. There she is, the lovely and talented one, and my personal feng shui consultant, Dr. Jonas. Howdy. Let's see. Bodhisattva. What's happening, Bodhisattva? Who else? Let's see. Did I say hi to Integrity and Karma? You get 2 highs. Sandy D. What's happening, Sandy? The World of Bliss is here. Woohoo, right back. Peter Bayonne. What's up, Peter? Good to see you. Magic Cat, and that's with an ICK. Check it in. My man, Mark S. He's here with us. Great to see you, Mark. I'm glad you're here. Thank you. Brianna Eves, GFX. Brianna is my go-to for movies, clips, and graphics. So everybody give Brianna a nice thank you for helping out with stuff like serious sports and some more things moving forward. CR user, crazy wind. Yeah, here too. Really windy here. Really windy. Yeah, Bay Area, Southern California, you guys, incoming. Benito Diaz. If you missed last week's show, I highly urge you go check it out. Benito and I had a great discussion about astrology and AI, and I'm kind of go there a little bit again tonight. Not in depth at the way Benito and I did. And again, once again, thanks to Benito for uncovering all that information. But my own perspective and on AI, astrology, and things related. Cynthia Cluth is here. Anna Soroka, she's checking in from Canada. Hi, Anna. Sarah Matheson, UK, London calling. We haven't seen Ralph Winter in a while. Claire had a marathon client session. Generator went too far. Laugh up, no regrets. Claire, you just got to leave it all. No tread on the tire, Claire. No tread on the tire. Grace Gravity from rainy LA. What's happening, Double G? There she is, CC Jones, the fantastic one. First rain in a long time. So I guess, Lynn, you're getting some of that Pacific downpour. Interesting topic for today. Never really thought about it. I think of astrology as a tool for good or evil, depending on the person using it. Well, Peter, I gave it some thought this weekend, and I have some thoughts about it. And I think mostly you're correct. But we're going to try to turn this thing inside out and have a nice discussion about, does astrology provide a moral compass? Okay, who else do we have? Moon Squad. We're getting almost caught up here. Justin Zagarella, doggone it. Your dog is going nuts. I didn't mean to upturn or upend the balance and tranquility in your house, Christy, or anybody else that has a dog by playing those dogs barking. But hey, got to liven it up a little bit, right? Let's see, who else do we have here? Thank you, Claire. Thank me later, about a half hour into the show. Let's see, who else do we have? Bad dogs. No, they're not smiling. Means they're showing teeth. Those dogs mean business. Those dogs are doing a job. They're protecting hearth and home. They're good dogs. Only bad dogs are the people that want to take something away from that hearth and home. In the other case, they're really just fine animals, just doing what they were bred to do. People say how lucky I was to work with dogs. They can kill you. Yes, they certainly can, depending on the dog. Let's see, who else do we have? Jackie Delaria, buonasera. Scuba Kel's here. Hi, Scuba Kel. Sean Alay. Big Sky checking in from northwestern Montana. Ooh, it's cold up there, northwestern Montana. Knight of Cups, a good day back to you. Ashley G is here. Hope I'm doing well. Yeah, it's been a good day. It's been an interesting day. I got into some Sagittarius moon. There's something called rightism with the Sagittarius moon. Like, I'm right and you're not fucking right. You get that with the Sagittarius moon. Bucephus, what's going on, brother Boo? Glad to have you here. Bucephus, I guess he's gotten liberated back on Twitter again. I guess Ben Shapiro was part of your time out there. Boo on Ben. No, I like being the black pill. It's so ironic. Okay. If you're attached to the black pill, you can stay with the black pill, Christine. But remember, life is a series of attachments that we need to let go of. Perhaps not now, perhaps not tomorrow, but at some point, it'll lose. Rocky, checking in from southwestern Montana. What was this? Oh, I just got an interesting message here. Hold on. Oh, how can you do that? Fucking epic times. Trump has named his vice presidential choices. Pretty cocky, that Trump. What do you think? Rob Scanlon. Rob, first of all, are you in Hawaii? That's number one. But if you're in California, are you getting the board out? And are you going to surf these tasty motherfucking waves that are coming in with this storm? That's what I want to know. Let's see, who else? They're messing with my numbers. Yeah, we know that. But it's always good to hope, right? To have faith that I'll get over 13,000. Let's see. They hide the truth bringers, but I have a feeling God's about to blast through that bullshit. Claire, let me just put that up there. I love that comment. Love it. There you go. Charlie. Buffalo Charles. Police volunteer with Jack Osborne. That's weird. I can kind of see that, though. Probably 3-letter agency that is yet to be revealed. A good call, Jay. We had a golden retriever called Tucker. Well, we're bringing it full circle here, aren't we? Dogs, Tucker. Did your golden retriever spy on you? Now, that would be too weird. Celeste Loveheart is here. Hello, Celeste. Maria Dange checking in from France. Good to see you. And your sunny moon appellation. Let's see. Sheila Sampson checking in. Gucci the Goats. Jake. It's Jake from Farm State. Not State Farm, but Farm State. Always good to see you, Jake. Melania wants Tucker to be VP. I think he would be. We talked about Tucker. We talked about Tucker being VP back when Trump was president. Remember that? We had that discussion. If you're interested in such things, his chart is like really good with Trump's. And he kind of needs a Taurus if we're playing that game. Howard Kane, my man, Mr. Lieber Howard Kane, he's checking in from the snowy mountains of Idaho. What's going on, Howard? Always good to see you. Meogical Catacorn from up the road here in Tejas, Heather Rue. It's been an interesting Pluto return. That's an understatement. Hey, Steve Letro, we framed our Egyptian Zodiac Papyrus today. I have one of those, and it's framed. Me and you, we belong to the same club. You know what I'm saying, Steve. Same club. Let's see, Patty Lucia, she's here. She's from Georgia. Let's see, Gucci, our friend Jake is from Mississippi. We have Mississippi in the house. No one you know. Hello, no one you know. Evening, back at you. Who else do we have? I just love saying hi to people. We'll get to the show eventually. You guys are the stars of the show right now. Midlife Terrorist. First time here, Clara sent me. That was going to be the title of my first book, American Terrorist. Yeah, it still might be. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Power's going off and on in NorCal. Rob, get that freaking board and get out there to Mavericks. Okay, Rob, this is the day where you got a kid. You can't do that. Second thought. Stay home. Make sure the power stays on. I was going to invoke some kind of surfing Valhalla metaphor. We don't want to do that. Let's see. I want to continue sweeping out the homeless. It's a really interesting point, Cynthia. Yeah, it's like Flushing, right? Harriet Bowie, what's going on, Harriet? Hey. Who else has video on YouTube? Anyone with a link to? Let's just go into the show here. Benito isn't on YouTube. Maybe Benito should be on YouTube, though. That's a really good point there. Let's see, who else do we have? It was Miraculous Healing Snorga, still processing. Well, miraculous is what we're all about. Pacific Prospector, what's going on, Pacific? Good to see you. Banks, Colorado, checking in. That's Justin. I love doing the geography stuff. Get to see where all you're coming from. I think the overlords are trying to hijack Pluto and Aquarius. Good luck. Good luck with that, overlords, because it is going to fuck with you. Oh, you think you can hijack Pluto and Aquarius? Oh, you think you're high and mighty? Oh, you think you're omniscient, omnipotent? No. Good luck with that. Like gonna be like herding cats. Can't do it. My man Robin checking in from the great state of Georgia, North Carolina. I'm sorry, he was in Georgia. He's in North Carolina. Great forecast. Yeah, we got to talk all about Russ's chart. Not all about it, but just a little bit. And then Christine chimed in and he brought up human design, and Russ is a projector. So I got to explain that to Russ. And it's always interesting to take a subject that somebody knows nothing about and condense it into about 3 minutes so they get the thumbnail in the Reader's Digest version. That was kind of fun. Let's see. Who else do we have? Marie MacArthur. Hello, Marie. I'm just going through everybody. I'm sorry. It's just the way it is tonight. We are supposed to provide and demonstrate the moral compass. All the world is a stage. I think that's part of the discussion. 5DRG, what's going on? Scott Ann checking in from Detox. Scott, well, if you're in private detox, we wish you the speediest of detoxing, whatever kind of detox mode you're in, Scott. Just let it out. Let it out, get it out. And then resurrection is always a nice theme. So big ups and big love to you, Scott. Heron, it's Elsbeth from Japan. Hey, Elsbeth, what's going on? Let's see, who else we have. Isn't it snowing in Texas? No. It's windy, though. It's kite weather. I was reminiscing with the good doctor today about my kite flying days. I used to love kites. I had 2 kites that were my favorite. One was just a straight paper kite, that kind of kite with a tail. I used to get that thing. I'd get like 1,000 feet of string, 1,500 feet of string, right? It just let it all out. That was cool. And then I had kind of more of a stunt kite, and I'd let that sucker sail. A lot of fun with kites. Being a Sag Moon, I can attest to that. My man, here he is, Mark Malone in the house tonight, listening while washing my 2-year-old. All right, Mark, you get that 2-year-old scrubby-dubby clean. Glad you're here, brother. Good to see you. Heather Rue is a Sag Moon. Laugh out loud. Yeah, I went to bed hard. That old fucker deserves it sometimes. So I don't blame you. I don't blame you, Bucephus. You just want to go. Let's see. Who else do we have? Thank you, Sheila. The good doctor gifted it to me. Benito's got a link for Peter. Pretty close to that with my Virgo moon. Oh, who else? All right, what else we got going on here? Most of the lakes in Carolinas, Georgia have some dark histories. There's some darkness everywhere, man. There's some darkness everywhere. Let's see. So somebody heard Little Ben Jones. I know, impossible to think that anybody could hurt he's a Capricorn. I did not have Ben Shapiro doing a fucking rap video on my 2024 bingo card. I did not have that, by the way. I'm not sure many people did. Let's see. Thomas Massey for VP. Can we take the V out of that? Just wondering. I'm a big Massey fan. One of the most honest people in a very dishonest game. Let's see. Did I say hi to Patty Lucia? Not. There it is. I'm in NorCal. Surfed Santa Cruz on Christmas Day. It was big fun. You got my ass kicked too. That's where I used to surf back when I was in high schools in Santa Cruz. Hey, what's up? What's up with you? Oh man, yeah. God bless. Jill was how I met Mark, and Jill was a client of mine. And I actually looked at Mark's chart prior to Jill meeting Mark, and I said, "This is a great guy." I was like, do not skip go or pass go or whatever the monopoly terminology is. And I was absolutely 100% right about Mark. Let's see, who else do we have here? Karmakazi, unseasonably warm in Minnesota. Maybe they're taking some of the cold out of there and putting it someplace else. Healing Heart Rosie. Hello, Healing Heart. Patricia Farrington tuning in from North Carolina. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. And thank you for being here. I wouldn't be here if you weren't. So it's a mutual appreciation society. Mika with the pink hand wave. What's going on, Miko? Sorry, not Mika. Miko. Got to get my vowels correct. Let's see. Steve Borg Resistance. 50 degrees here in North Dakota tomorrow. Man, that is just weird. Is it climate change? Terry in you got a lot of North Carolina in the house. You guys should do a meetup. Let's see. Maceo Gabbard. What's up, Maceo? Cassandra Lynn. Hi, Cassandra. Applesauce pouches for all. That's emergency food for kids, right? The applesauce pouch. Shout out to North Carolina. There we go. There you go. More. So we need Robin, why don't you manage that, Robin? Why don't you organize that, Robin? Separates the men from the boys. Let's see what else do we have here. Everything just stood still for the last week. Ooh. I had a lot going on. But hey, Pluto and Aquarius has really ramped up. We got Arkansas. That's where my son is going to college, is in Arkansas. Let's see. As soon as Robert starts the facts, I'm out of here. So it was really funny on Wednesday. I got to share this chat story. I don't know. This to me, this totally typified Chataria. Here I am. I'm breaking shit down. And as I'm almost done, I'm kind of going through the chat. What did we have? We had Lynn talking about, I don't know, something around soil and copper. And then we had William Powell's talking about his godlike status in a good way, not in a bad way. And then we had some other conversations. There were like 4 fucking conversations going on simultaneously in chat. And maybe a couple of people were bouncing off. Not that you have to, right? But it was like, this is amazing. Like, this is fucking amazing. Let's see, who else do we have here? I like Uranus and Cancer people a lot. Oh, Uranus and Cancer. Those are boomers. Boomers have Uranus and Cancer. Jeff has a little boomer love confession going on. Boomers need love too. I used to get pissed off at Theo White. He would just rail on boomers like, dude, they're not the problem. They're not the problem. Some of them are a problem. I can go across any generation with Pluto and go, right? I think where the boomers got challenged was when they rose to power to rule the country, right? Like the first boomer that becomes president is Bill Clinton. He's a fuck up, right? He's a total fuck up. But he was born and bred to be a fuck up. He was socially engineered to be a fuck up. So can you really blame it on the boomers? But he is symbolic. I got Pluto in Virgo, and my president was Barack fucking Obama. How do you think I feel about that? The one guy that's probably ever going to rep Pluto in Virgo, and it's that dude. Oh, yeah. Gen X, I hope you fare better. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight. Not those guys, but some of the generations. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Exnard Prime, fellow Virgo. Nice Virgo blue shirt. This account is dedicated to Gen X, Chiron return, and grade 2 eclipses. Hope I can behave. I want to remain respectful. First of all, we all do our best to be respectful, but behaving in chat has never been a prerequisite. Flat Earth Hippie, well, you're here. Absolutely. Star Dreamer. It's been a minute. Glad you're back. There's a comet accompanying the eclipse. Ooh. And a little spice. It's kind of like the Emerald Lagasse version of an aspect. Bang! There you go. Isn't he a Sagittarius? He might be. I have to look that up. Let's see. Patricia Farrington is a projector. So am I. Autumn Marlene, Eagle Shield. What's happening? Ben Shapiro is so arrogant. He was born and bred that way. He was born and bred to be that way. Let's see. Who else? You notice the 2 theory of lights in the Donnie Darko movie theater scene look like 2 total solar eclipses. You know what's really interesting about that movie is that the guy that did that movie went on to do, was it Southern California Tales? Right, that was his massive follow-up to Donnie Darko, and very interesting story about that movie. Anyway, let's see. Hearts of Source by JJ. Today I'm venturing more of electric culture. Hit up Lynn. She's the electric culture queen here. Jensen, the new next. What's happening, Jensen? Amy Gill. Let's see. Who else? I'm waiting for Tim Pool, Ben Shapiro. Those guys would not have me on their show. They would not fucking have me on their show. Who do you think speaks faster, Ben Shapiro or Tim Pool? That's what I want to know. Janae. Hey, Janae. North Carolina meetup would be cool. Look at that. We just seeded a North Carolina meetup. Justin will do a Georgia meetup. Let's see. Anybody else here? Did I leave anybody out? You guys are getting local in chat. You just keep, hey, Ferris. Yo, Ferris. Joan and I had the pleasure of having dinner with Ferris and his family on one of the most butt-ass cold nights in here in Texas this winter. And it was fun. We had a really good time. And it was good food, too. Good to see you, Ferris. Thanks for being here. Let's see. Who else do we have? Boomers, born and bred to be fucked up. You know what happened to boomers? Here's what happened to boomers. No fault divorces. Birth control and no fault divorces really fucked things up for boomers. Because once the no fault divorces came in California, which was around what, like 1969, 1970, that was it. You know, just spread from state to state to state, just became kind of a national thing. So boomers took advantage of the no fault divorce. And that's one of the complaints, laments that I've heard from a number of Gen X people who are the biological offspring of boomers, and that they got fucked up. You know, that their family situations got atom bombed, and they didn't really have a family, or they had to deal with mom's boyfriend or dad's, you know, new stepmom. But hey, it's Pluto and Libra. You know, you're gonna have to deal with that. You're gonna have to deal with that. So a long time ago, I did movies based on generations. Like, these are the archetypal movies for the various Pluto generations. I think I've told you guys this before. So for Pluto and Leo, the boomers, it was The Wizard of Oz. Right? The Wizard of Oz is their movie. It is their movie, and it's the movie that really typifies their generation in a lot of ways, right? Because at a certain point, all they want to do is just go home, like whether it's Vietnam or Woodstock or sort of the bad acid trips that come at the end of the 60s. All they want to do is just go back to Kansas in some ways, and that's what the boomers do. Like, they become very conservative when they head into the 70s. They do human potential, make a shit ton of money in real estate, and they become very conservative, vote for Ronald Reagan, right? So in a weird way, they kind of go back to their 1950s, late 1940s, 1950s roots. And along the way, they pull the curtain back on the wizard, right? That was always their thing. Like, the boomers were always about unmasking the man, whether it was Richard Nixon or J. Edgar Hoover or fill in the blank, right? You pull it back and it reveals that Oz is controlled by, a sad little man who was originally from Kansas himself. And that was their dream. They wanted to pull that curtain back. And in some ways, they kind of did with Nixon. So that's the boomer movie. Pluto and Leo, that's your movie, The Wizard of Oz. Pluto and Virgo, your movie is Mary Poppins. Why is it Mary Poppins? Because it's very Virgo, right? What does Mary Poppins do? She's a fucking nanny, right? And who's her boyfriend? He's a fucking chimney sweep. And so how Pluto and Virgo can you get? That's Pluto and fucking Virgo. Hey, let's take everyday jobs and turn these people into witches and wizards. That's exactly what they are, right? That's Pluto and Virgo, buoyed by a little Neptune and Scorpio. And with, what is it? Supercalifragilistic. I mean, it's all being laid out there. All being laid out for Pluto and Virgo. That's your movie, Mary Poppins. Pluto and Libra, it's none other than Star Wars. That's your movie, right? You have broken families in Star Wars. Like, Luke's being raised by who? What is his uncle or some shit like that, right? And he theoretically is attracted to his sister, but they're separated, so they don't even know they're fucking related. And then, of course, there's the weird stuff with the father who's not there, who is Darth Vader. So Pluto and Libra, that's your movie. Star Wars is about broken families, and then finding redemption and finding yourself apart from and confronting the father that left you, that bad father that left you. Now, millennials, I think the millennials movies are kind of twofold. Of course, we have Harry Potter, which is very millennial. It's all very, whatchamacallit, very magical, supernatural, right? Very scorpionic in a lot of ways. And then we also have the Twilight series, which I think is very millennial and kind of, Pluto and Scorpio and vampire love until death do you part and all the things that go along with it, right? That's all very dark and gothic and super, super, super millennial. So there you go. I haven't really figured out Pluto and Sag yet. It's been a long time since I kind of did my Pluto movies for generations. So speaking of generations, let me bring this up here. This is pretty interesting. I got into a little bit of rightism yesterday on Twitter, and before I do that, let me see here. Let me do this. So I'll show you what spurred the rightism. See if I can find my graphic here. Right here. Here we go. So I've put this up before. Not this one, but I've done this before. Some of you who follow me on Twitter will recognize this. So this is my Brady guide to Pluto. Okay, so here you have Marcia, and then you have Greg, right? They're the boomers, Pluto and Leo, right? Firstborn, they get the the fat of the land, they get the best economic conditions to grow up in. And I made this simple. I just kept it with 3 generations. And then you have the middle generation, which is Gen X. And I put in Pluto and Virgo and Libra. I just kind of joined them together, although you'll see that's a little bit different. And of course, that's the middle kids. And then we have Jan and we have Peter. Jan and Peter. And then we have the millennials who are the youngest. And they're the ones that, of course, are the most pampered, the ones that get a trophy for every fucking thing they do, even though they didn't fucking earn it. Just kidding. And then you have Cindy and Bobby, Pluto and Scorpio. So I put that up on Twitter, X, and I got some good comments. There's this one gal born 1980, and she said, "I'm Pluto and Libra, but I am not Gen X." She was defiant about that. And I understand the defiance. I kind of get it, right? Like, because I'm born in 1960, I'm sort of lumped in with the boomers, and I've never really considered myself much of a boomer. I got a little strain of boomer in me. But when you look at Gen X, my profile is way more Gen X. Latchkey kid, downturn economy, going from production to service, disillusionment, cynicism, Nixon, Vietnam, Watergate. Those are all kind of Gen X issues. They all come up in a Gen X profile. It's what I went through. So anyway, she said, "Well, I'm Pluto and Libra, but I am not Gen X." So we got into this thing, and I had to go in and look at what research, Beresford research. Now, when you want to check in with generational designations, Beresford research is your go-to source. I don't really know that. I just found this. And there are other places where you can find this information, but it made the most sense to me. So it's generations defined by name, birth, year, and ages. So Gen Z, 1997 to 2012, kind of right, I think, although Pluto goes into Capricorn in 2009. So we always have that weird little tail on these generations, right? So if you're born in 1960, 64, like you'll see here that Gen X is 65. So it's just a little hop, skip, and a throw here from 64 to 65 and some of the early 60s. Millennials, 81 to 1996. So she said she was born in 1980. And I said, well, technically speaking, you are, according to Beresford research, Gen X. Now, I didn't want to get into rightism here. You gotta clock your rightism sometimes. And being a Scorpio rising, sometimes I can get real dug in with rightism. So I did say that you came of age in the 90s, which is very different than coming of age in the 80s, which is true. Just like coming of age in the 60s is very different than coming of age in the 50s if you're in the late boomer, Pluto and Leo, Pluto and Virgo generational uh, cusp, right? It's true. So it's like, yeah, you had a different kind of upbringing. You were more typically associated with millennial phenomenon, coming of age in the 90s. Born 1980, by the time you hit 12, 13, it's 1992, 1993. If you're paying attention, fucking Rodney King, O.J. Simpson, you, things go off the fucking chain in the 90s. They really go off. It's dark. The 90s are dark. Not like the 80s. Conspicuous consumption, not quite the same. So here we go. Millennials, 81 to 96, Gen X, 65 to 1980. I think that's about right. I think it's kind of about right, even though you're in Pluto and Virgo here. Again, there's that tail. Like Pluto and Libra comes in 1970. But add 12 years onto that, it's 1977. You're coming of age in the 70s. You're hitting middle school, probably smoking your first joint. Boomers 2, also known as Generation Jones, 1955 to 1964. I think this is a fair assessment. So current ages 60 to 69. We're not like Boomers 1. I would say that we share more with probably Gen X, but it depends. I think the closer you are to 1955, the more you'll share with the Boomer generation, right? By the time you hit 1960, like you're 5 years old, and there's something about those first 3.5 years from child development, 2.5 years child development, real important. But by the time I'm 3 years old, I'm in a hospital room, get my tonsils out, looking at the TV, and asking my mom, "What's that? Who's that? Oh, that's the president. He was killed. It's his funeral." I swear to God, I have that memory. You're not going to have that if you're born in 1955. I guarantee you. Post-war, 28 to 45. This would also be known as the silent generation. Although I think a little bit of boomerism kicks in around 44. But, this is when the soldiers are coming back and they're having babies. And then we have World War II, 22 to 27, and that is the lost generation. That's what it is, the lost generation. Think Paris, expats, the roaring 20s, kind of. A little bit after that. All right, so there we go. Some interesting demarcations brought to us by Beresford Research, and I think that there's some validity to that, in my estimation. But we don't want to get hung up too much. Let me do this. I want to stop sharing. Oh no, it's the reboot moment. Once every show, we have a reboot moment. Oh, there we go. It rebooted itself. Thank you. Did it? Now I'm frozen. Okay. Sometimes I unfreeze. I know you can still hear me. Use your psychic power to meld with technology. Oh, thank you. You guys did it. Oh, I'm frozen again. Try it again one more time. Let's give it a little bit of a push, a little bit of a blast, a little nudge. Unfreeze me. See what happens. Okay. There we go. All right. Oh, AI is rebellious tonight. It's fucking rebellious. Come on, AI. We can do this. We can do this. Analog organic for the win. Although I may have to trigger it. I'm just going to trigger it. I'll be right back. Don't go away. See, it's that easy. It's that easy. Okay. Why don't we do this? Why don't we jump into the topic of conversation, which is does astrology provide a moral code? Just waiting for the glitching to stop. Okay, we close that up. There we go. Maybe I should close a few of these windows, a few of these tabs. You know, that might be helpful. Let me get rid of some of these tabs. Let's do this. Okay. All right. I think we're good. And then why don't we do this too? Claire, you awake? Come on, Claire. Ooh. Ooh. Good dog. There we go. All right. Just checking in, Claire. I told you I'd be coming back there. Okay. Let's get into this idea. Like, does astrology provide a moral code? I think this is a really interesting question. Let me tell you how I got to this topic or this this query. It goes back about 2 weeks ago, and I was on Twitter, and I started. All of a sudden, all these astrologers are popping up in my Twitter feed, so I started following some of them. Some of them follow me back, although they're not entirely interactive with me. That's fine. I don't need to be fuzzy buddy. But I started to follow this one woman, and I don't want to mention her name, but she has some pretty interesting tweets. And she, well, I'll just go ahead and mention her name. Her name is, I think, Moon Martian. Moon Martian that's what her Twitter, because she has Moon and Mars in the first house. I think it's important to bring that up because it is an integral part of the story. So here's what happened. There was a group of astrologers who used a Twitter space to talk about astrology and get into astrology. And then what they did is they took apart astrologers that they did not like or they didn't see eye to eye with. And it's usually based on something cultural. That's what was going on. So they would take their chart in this Twitter space and then deconstruct these people. And then what she did is she went public with it on Twitter and started taking these people on. Now, I don't even understand that concept. I just don't understand it. I don't understand getting together with a group of people and talking about certain people in their chart in a very public space. Number one, that's number one. Number two, to theoretically tear those people down. Don't understand it at all. So she went hard after these people and really defended the people that they were going after, which I thought was admirable. You know, it really speaks to like Moon Mars in the first house, Moon, you know, being emotional, Cancerian. I always think of Cancer as the underdog, Mars being the defender, right? The protector, the warrior. Like she really went at it with these people. And I actually admired that. And then what did they do? Well, then they took her chart and they put her on the rack. And then they used all these techniques. They're kind of Hellenistic, Arabic, like they don't use Placidus because they think it's colonialist. True point. And so they spent a long time dissecting her chart, which must have been very uncomfortable for this person. And so that's when this whole idea of does astrology provide a moral code came into my brain. And the reason why it came up is because this group of astrologers is what we would call woke, right? They're for all intents and purposes, cultural Marxists, and so they're taking astrology, and they're not even using Western astrology. They're going to use something else, like I don't know, some kind of caliphate system, right? So they can't even use Western astrology. But so, by the way, you go into any culture, and I guarantee you will find people who will perhaps may not be colonialists, but not any one group had a patent on the fucking slave trade. I can tell you that right now, right? Humans have been trading slaves for a very long time. And the white slave tradery started in the Caucasus Mountains, and that originated out of Saudi Arabia, not Saudi Arabia itself, but that region, right? So you can't just say, well, we're going to divest ourselves of Western astrology because it's tainted. You go into any fucking system and you'll find taint in any system. But this is what brought the question up. Like, does astrology have a moral code? Because according to them, yes, there is a moral code. And you adopt the moral code by rejecting Western astrology, right? We're just not going to do it. But at the same time, right, they had no problem dissecting people in a public space based on their chart, which to me doesn't sound very moral. Now does it? Right? So it's just sparked this idea of what do we do when we use astrology? We all have a bias, and we all have lenses, and we all have points of view that we come at this thing with. And it's almost impossible to divest oneself of that. And if you try to go outside of the system and do another system, you're going to run into very similar kinds of hooks and barricades. And I know that there are a lot of people that champion Vedic astrology. Well, it's a fucking caste system, right? It's a caste system. It's what it's known for. It's what India is known for. So are you going to just junk Western astrology because, well, it's Western and it's colonial, but we'll go to Vedic, which has its own set of paradoxes built into it. You know what I'm saying? Right? So from a big picture perspective in how astrology is used, I thought to myself, well, is there a moral compass in it? Because some people believe that there is some system that's less tainted or untainted than other systems. And quite frankly, I just don't agree with that. And you can have people, again, so I'm all about the practitioner. I'm all about people who use astrology. And I don't care what fucking tool they use. You can use any tool you want to. You can use sidereal, you can use Vedic, you can use Hellenistic, use whole signs, right? Western Placidus, but it's on the astrologer. And we're just talking from working with a client perspective, right? That's what so when we talk about astrology and this idea of a moral code, or does it have a moral compass? It really encompasses three different things. Number one, it encompasses if you're an astrologer or you use astrology to communicate with another person and help them on their journey, that's one version. The second version is how it applies to yourself, right? Can you define a moral code through astrology? In a time where religion, which has once stood for a moral code, whether it's the Ten Commandments or the words of the Quran or whatever, right? In a time where those kinds of relationships and those kinds of foundations and touch points are being eroded. And there are clearly in Christianity, whether it's the Old Testament and you get, the Ten Commandments, or you look at the New Testament and Psalms and the life of Jesus, right? There's a moral code in there. There's an organizing principle in there. But as we theoretically move further away from that, and we move into Pluto and Aquarius, now all of a sudden we're asking different questions in a lot of ways, not just about these belief systems that have been a part of our lives, but astrology itself, because astrology is ruled by Aquarius. So we're going to encounter these kinds of discussions. And what I saw was through that Twitter exchange was not good, right? It was not good. It was kind of the worst case scenario of Pluto and Aquarius. It was almost like a flash mob, like the equivalent of whatchamacallit? I'm drawing a blank. Summer of Floyd, right? That's what it was the equivalent of. And Antifa. And we're going to use astrology instead. It was really bizarre. So this idea of does astrology have a moral code stretches across 3 platforms. 4 if you take into account the collective or the mundane version. It's client-based, it is the individual, I guess 3, and it's a kind of astrology, well, 4, astrology at large as a concept, and then mundane astrology. So it's an interesting thing to discuss and wrap our heads around. So I'm going to continue to talk about it a little bit and try to come to some kind of answer, right? Or some kind of, not an answer, but come to some kind of conclusion that perhaps brings up more questions, but we may be able to answer a few along the way. So another thing that fueled this idea in my head about does astrology provide a moral code was I heard a really great talk on Nietzsche, and it was by this guy Michael Surgu. I'm sure some of you have seen him come up in your your YouTube feeds. Pretty interesting guy. He takes on a lot of different philosophers and does a really good job at breaking down their work, their most important works, and bits and pieces inside of those works. So, he was doing a kind of a talk. I think he's from the 90s or something. Looks very 90s, but these talks have been digitized and put on YouTube. So he was talking about Nietzsche, and that also prompted this thought, because Nietzsche was somebody who had a very interesting kind of moral code, right? Like energy, and this kind of naturalism and aspiring to be the Ubermensch, right? And so who do we see downstream from Nietzsche? We see Crowley, right? Do as thou will. Although I think Crowley is a bit more of a degraded copy of Nietzsche, but Crowley talks a lot about astrology, right? So some of Crowley's works on astrology are actually pretty interesting. If you took Crowley out of the name, you probably wouldn't know it was Crowley, right? But again, there's a moral code, theoretically, that is attached with Crowley. So by osmosis, to some degree, it sort of filters into astrology as well, right? So if you look at all these other astrologers kind of over time, like Dane Rudhyar is somebody who I talk about a lot, and I have a lot of respect for Dane Rudhyar's work. But Dane Rudhyar is a theosophist. So Dane Rudhyar is superimposing his ideas of theosophy in the Great White Brotherhood in Madame Blavatsky onto astrology. So that is how Rudhyar arrives at a moral code through astrology. So I thought that this was a really interesting question to ask. And then you have kind of the more humanist astrologers, like people like Stephen Forrest in evolutionary astrology. Or then you have somebody like Liz Green, who's, I would say, more of a depth psychology, Jungian practitioner of astrology. And all these people have influenced me to some degree or another. And I would guarantee you that if you went deep enough into their work, you would find some kind of thread that would reveal their relationship with their own moral code, or how astrology reflects their own moral code in some ways. And so with Pluto and Aquarius, I think it's really interesting to talk about it, right? So what do we derive from the wheel? In as much as we can. Um, so let me see if I come up with a good example. What's his name? Oh, tip of my tongue. It is okay. So there are people who are quote unquote Luciferians and Satanists who use astrology, right? You will learn astrology through that world. If you go down that path, and by the way, they're different, but if you went down that path, and I have encountered like hardcore astrological material that is quote unquote satanic, which has its, believe it or not, has its own kind of moral equivalence, right? It's not that Satanists are without morality. They have their own morality that is theoretically different than other people. And yes, they use astrology, right? So that's on one end of the spectrum. And then you have people who are kind of astrotheosophical, and then they find all these threads of astrology showing up in the Bible. And at that point, astrology takes on a very different kind of interpretation. And as a result, a different kind of morality. So even when you go to the poles, right, which is very Piscean in a lot of ways, this whole idea of a type of morality being woven into astrology is kind of there, right? It's kind of there in those poles. And then somewhere in the middle are the rest of us kind of circling this wheel and finding our own relationship to this thing that theoretically either provides a moral code or it doesn't, or it does to some degree, but we don't lean on it as the ultimate authority in our lives. So I thought that this was a really interesting question for us to bring up and kind of dissect. And so here are my thoughts on just, besides just going out and looking at all those different variables. So my thoughts are, yes, astrology does provide a moral code. Absolutely. 100% it does. How it's interpreted is based upon the individual. The most common denominator in astrology for me that provides a moral code is Saturn. Because when you have Saturn, wherever Saturn shows up in your chart, or when you're going through a Saturn transit, and especially one that is difficult, right? What is the first thing you want to do when it gets really difficult? You want to get out of it. You want to get out of it. Pluto will do the same thing. Like Pluto transits, you're getting cooked, right? So, but we're just going to focus on Saturn, right? So when Saturn transits come in, and like a conjunction or an opposition or a square, which are the three hot points with Saturn, what do you want to do? You want to get out of it. Most people do. I don't blame them at first, but that's where you're tested, right? That is where you're tested. And what are you going to do when things get difficult? Our moral code kicks in. Are you going to stand up and learn your lesson, whatever that is, like an adult, right? Are you going to do that? Or are you going to blame somebody else? Are you going to blame an institution? Are you going to blame your parents? Are you going to blame your upbringing? Are you going to go to the other side of the chart? And, usually the opposition, not that it will normally take this place, but the opposite sign or planet of Saturn is the moon. So you blame your upbringing, your past, and your trauma, right? Saturn doesn't give a shit about that, right? Saturn says, what are you going to learn from this moment? What are you going to learn long term? Short term even, right? That's to me when all of a sudden now astrology has a moral component. When you get into the transits, and especially with Saturn, how do you stand up? What are you going to do? Are you going to complain? It's really interesting. When I moved here to this house, moved in with my mother, I've had a ringside seat on mortality. And it's been a really fascinating process to kind of be a part of that. And watching, my mother go through very hardcore limitations and kind of a decreasing sense of ability, right? I'm watching this, right? And I'm watching her, struggle with it. And we had this conversation the other day, and she's wanting to go back to like her previous unencumbered self. And we talked about expectations and limiting expectations. And it was a really powerful conversation to have with somebody who has been independent all their life. And for me, right, being here and the only person here, I had to reflect back on, well, what does that mean to me? So here I am, and I'm, basically my mother's caregiver right now. And I remember, kind of ramping up to this with the move and everything. And I was like, oh, fuck, I don't know about this, right? I just really don't know about this. And I was like, oh. And at a certain point, that just went out the window. By the way, shout out to Joan. She's been a real amazing help with the transition and everything. So I'm not just doing this on my own. But I realized that this is like the here and now, right? This was the here and now. And to have any kind of other expectation other than being here and a part of this experience was madness, just madness. And so it's like, it's not even a question now, right? And for me, that is indicative of some kind of moral code. That astrology itself may not be a catch-all kind of system and modality as a moral code, but it's built in here, right? It is built into astrology itself. And so we're tested by Saturn. So Saturn says, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to respond to this? Are you going to cry and wail about it? Or are you going to do your best to take on the level of accountability and responsibility in your life? And usually what happens out of that is that, and when I talk about moral, I'm not talking about somebody moralizing you, right? That's negative. That's a negative connotation. It's really interesting that the world moral and morale are very much connected. And so if you have the right dispensation around your morality or your moral relationship with what you're going through, it's a pretty good chance your morale will be a lot better by and large, right? And a lot of times it's kicking and screaming here with Saturn. But this is one component in astrology that I think is really indicative of where we get tested and where our moral component or our moral growth takes place. And I do think that this is an important development in the individual, because we can also equate in some ways morality with responsibility, right? And I'm on a kind of a Saturnian jag in my life. So these are the things that I'm exploring right now. And they're amazing instructors and teachers. So not everybody's going to be going through a Saturn transit. Not everybody's going to be going through a Saturn square or Saturn conjunction or Saturn opposition. So then we get tests along the way. Jupiter brings us great tests where we are brought gifts into our life. And what do we do with those things? Do we squander them? Do we celebrate them? Do we enjoy them? Are we conscious of them? Right? There's some degree of morality that comes out of that as well. Right? And I'm not here to say, well, you've got to, be tighty-whitey or I mean, you can basically learn from your mistakes. Right? You can learn. You say, maybe I should have been a bit more generous instead of holding on and hoarding to, all this stuff, right? All this Jupiterian stuff. Right? So you come out of these things. You come out of these transits, hopefully with some degree of understanding, that you begin to form a structure and a foundation for your life so that you can approach your life with a sense of code. And maybe that's a better conversation to be having. Does astrology provide us with a code in our life? You know, Ernest Hemingway was really big on this whole idea of code. And you know, when I talk about code is associated with like a code of ethics, right? Or a code that a person ascribes to so that they can learn something. You know, when you become like a medical professional, you follow a code of conduct, right? So I think astrology also provides us with that, with the development of a code in our lives. And if we're going to be integrated and individuated beings, which I think we all want to be, and what do I mean by that? Well, it means that you can respond to just about anything in any given situation from a wide spectrum of responses, not just one that does what's told or reacts reflexively against authority or spends wildly when you have a lot or weeps pitifully when you have nothing, right? I mean, this is where astrology can really come into play and gives us the opportunity to have an individuated integration. This is what Jung would talk about, by the way. I think it's in here, right? So astrology itself may not be the moral code, but if you go through this and you pay attention and you understand what you're going through, you will ultimately be the recipient of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding that will ultimately make you a better person and somebody who is more responsive and integrated. And it doesn't mean that you're a stick in the mud and a fuddy-duddy, right? It's different. It's a different kind of aggregation of all the different parts. So I talked a little bit about Saturn. So where else in the chart can we discover this idea of a code or the development of the self, some of which includes a type of quote unquote morality? It's the ascendant. It's right here, right? So when you're born with the ascendant, you have a life lesson. That's how you're evolving. It's through the ascendant. You're going to learn through that. And again, right? Again, you're going to develop things as planets pass through that ascendant that either give you opportunity and or restraint. I'll give you an example. So when I'm a late Scorpio rising. So when Pluto was in Scorpio in the 90s, you know, kind of getting towards the final degrees of Pluto and Scorpio, I had it right on my ascendant. And I went through kind of a do as thou will period. It was like, fuck it. Fuck it. I'm just gonna, you know, focus on me. I'm gonna do whatever the fuck I want. I'm gonna fuck anybody I want. Right. And Pluto was more than happy to help me out with that journey and that trip. Right? More than happy. And along the way, through that conjunction, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about intention. I learned a lot about greed. I learned a lot about, to some degree, kind of a narcissistic development of myself at the exclusion of other people. There was a lot of energy during that time. Trust me, I got stories one of these days I will tell, right? And I'll tell you what else I learned. I learned about my character and this idea of a moral code because I had made some serious fucking transgressions during that time. And a lot of those with Pluto, they will come back and bite you in your ass. And so when we have these transits of the first house, we're learning about this idea of self, right? Whatever is going through there, whether it's Uranus or whether it's Jupiter or whether it's Saturn or Neptune or Pluto, you are going to learn about you. And with Saturn, there'll be more limitation, more focus. Jupiter, more opportunity, but also perhaps more squandered opportunity, right? So this is a really interesting place to explore this idea of what happens as we move through the chart and move through our lives as it relates to the expression of self through the ascendant. Now, there are some people who believe that after a while, you learn those things and you move off the ascendant and then you move more into your sun sign. And I think that there is some truth to that. But from that point forward, you are integrated, right? So theoretically, you should have this idea of a moral compass in your life after you've gone through significant transits to the ascendant. Again, whatever that means to you. You know, what's really interesting is this phrase, and I'm going to flip the tables here. It's this phrase that I ran across back in the 90s, actually late 80s, early 90s. And it's truth has its own morality, which I think is a really interesting phrase, right? Truth has its own morality, which I do believe, by the way. But when you get into a statement like that, it's like, you better be ready for it, because you will be, knocked upside down when you're really open to a statement like that, because truth will have its way with you. And guess what will happen? You will develop a code. You will develop and evolve along a certain line just based on that alone, right? So it's another interesting way to look at all this. The truth has its own morality, and somewhere in the wheel, at some point, you're going to get hit with truth right between your eyes, right here. And it's usually going to be on the ascendant and in the first house. And a lot of times it's those long transits, the Saturn, the Pluto, sometimes Neptune. When you get into Neptune transits, boy, you will find out just the amount of self-deception that you and other people are capable of, right? So what comes out of that? A type of clarity, right? And hopefully, you move through it and you have a code. Like there is a code now that you can apply to your life, right? These are just things that are ping-ponging in my brain about how we evolve through the chart, and this idea of, do we have a moral code in astrology? So that's on a personal level, right? The ninth house, which represents higher learning, higher teaching, higher mind, philosophy, that is a house where you can learn about this idea of morality and code, right? So if you have transits going through your ninth house, say Saturn is going through your ninth house, what are you going to do, right? You are going to go through sort of this limiter of belief systems, right? And Saturn will winnow them out. And you may find one thing that you can attach to with a Saturn transit of the ninth house. And that becomes your teacher, that becomes your guide. And it limits shit, right? It's like, no, there is an orthodox way of doing this, right? You will find that out with Saturn transits of the ninth house. The ninth house, to me, is where a lot of this stuff gets worked out, right? It is a house that is connected to these quote unquote higher principles. So when you have ninth house transits, you'll find a lot of that out, especially with Saturn, Pluto. If you have a Pluto transit of the ninth house, which is a really long transit, right? You are really burning through these belief systems, right? They're getting incinerated so that you come to some new appreciation or some new level of the truth itself. You do it in the first house as well, but it's going to be more about ego identification and self versus the ninth house, which is, pretty conceptual in a lot of ways. So the ninth house is a proving ground. We get to test our connection to these things called truth. And we do get tested. Oh, do we get tested when Saturn transits our ninth house, right? Because a lot of us, theoretically, a lot of us, have something to share, and dare I say, even teach in our own unique kind of ways. Saturn in the ninth house will do that, right? Saturn will say, hey, guess what? Guess what you get to learn now, right? You get to learn this on a higher level, and you get to apply this in your own life. And it usually has a lot to do with restraint and restraint around belief systems. I'll tell you another place where this gets worked out. It's worked out in your fourth house, because that's your roots. And that's where you grow up with, right? These are the emotional influences, the container, the vessel for almost the entirety of the chart. And, if you have Neptune in the fourth house, or you have Pisces on the fourth house cusp, boy, that gets real tricky, doesn't it? It gets slippery. So you're gonna ultimately have to establish kind of a new ground, and when you do that, what are you doing? You're kind of going through this spin cycle with this area of your chart where all of a sudden you have to kind of make a stand, right? And again, I'm referencing Saturn here because I've got Saturn going through my fourth house, and that's what I'm doing. It's like, oh, look what I get to learn about. Look what I get to be an adult about. And again, through these things, you develop what I would call a code. And so in an individual level, I do believe that there is a moral code that one can derive through astrology if you are paying attention. Go to the seventh house. How do you deal with other people? How do you deal with relationships? How do you show up? Right? That's all part of a code. It's all part of kind of your moral fiber. What are you willing to accept or not accept? Venus aspects in your chart, Venus-Neptune squares. What are you willing to allow? Right? How many times are you going to let people piss on you or shit on you or, be nice to you and con you out of money? Right? And guess what? You find out and you say no more. What are you doing? You're developing a code. You're developing a strategy. You're developing something that has to do with your own version of morality. Now, you don't have to really, blast the person. You may want to forgive them. You may not want to put a curse on them, right? And haunt them to the day that they die. I mean, who knows? You just want to say, hey, my bad. I shouldn't have done it. I fell for it again, right? But you can't let it happen again. So what are you doing, right? You have to develop a code. You have to develop some kind of moral approach. And when I say moral approach, I'm not talking about moralizing. I'm not talking about, going to church on Sunday, right? It's connected to the word morale. And we as a group of people have been demoralized. We have been demoralized. So we have to remoralize. We have to remoralize, which means that we have to have a code of ethics. We have to have a code of behavior. That's what we have to do. And I guarantee you, it is somewhere in this fucking wheel. You will run into it. You will run up against it. It'll run into you head on. And then what do you do with it? Right? What do you do with it? As we move into Pluto and Aquarius, and things are going to really look like they're going just off the fucking rails, you're going to need that. You are going to need that, right? You're going to need it. And another reason that this discussion popped up, was I follow this really interesting young Irish dude named Uber Boyo over on Twitter. And he's really into Nietzsche. I love his posts, by the way. Great tweets. And it was all about these moral choices that people are going to have to theoretically make with Pluto and Aquarius. This is a really interesting conversation. And it gets back to, I'm going to expand the conversation a little bit here, but it gets back to this idea of mundane astrology and a morality for our times. So it was kind of going, well, what happens if somebody says, well, I'm going to get a chip, right? And they get a chip. And the next thing you know, they can speak 20 different languages. Or let's say they have some kind of bionic implant, and they can crush your skull like that, right? So we're talking intelligence and power. So these were all kinds of scenarios that he threw out there. And it's like, these are really interesting questions. Like, where do we weigh in on that? And as Pluto moves into Aquarius, these questions hinge in a lot of ways upon morality, our humanity, right? Like, are you going to play the game because somebody else has an advantage? Go back to George Soros being interviewed by the guy from 60 Minutes or whatever that guy was. And basically George Soros said, well, if I didn't do it, somebody else would have, right? He was very clear about that. So this is very pervasive in our society. If somebody is looking to gain an advantage, and again, with Pluto and Aquarius, we're talking about transhumanism, a body modification, brain modification. These are all choices. And they're moral fucking choices that we are all going to have to make at some point. And I know a lot of you are saying, not going there. I'm full analog. I'm full organic. And by the way, I'm with you. I don't have any aspirations to have any further modification than whatever nanosensors and arrays that are already in me thanks to the fucking chemtrails. But that said, right, now we're witnessing all these people running around with their Apple vision, looking like Cyclops from the X-Men, driving their cars, skateboarding down the street. Oh yeah, it started. Pluto and Aquarius is here. Last week, somebody theoretically got Elon Musk's Neuralink chip. Pluto and Aquarius. Right now, we're talking about morality on the big picture, right? And it is defined astrologically by Pluto. And we get into a lot of these social dilemmas with Pluto, right? Because it's such a long cycle. Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto and Capricorn was a really interesting, what I would call emotional dilemma, right? Because you could kind of see where things were going with Pluto and Capricorn. Like once Obama got into office, you could kind of see where things were going. It's like, oh, well, I want to be on the winning team. So I'll be liberal, or I'll be progressive, or I'll be persecuted, right? I'm going to be a victim. Why? Because that's the gravy fucking train. That's where the money was with Pluto and Capricorn. And there were people that were making career choices with Pluto and Capricorn, that they were going to be on that side of the ledger sheet because that's where they saw the institutions moving. That's where they saw the networks moving. That's where they saw, when I say institutions, I'm talking about educational institutions, financial institutions were heading in that direction as well. So people were making life-based choices on Pluto and Capricorn. Whether they knew Pluto was in Capricorn or not, I guarantee you they were making those choices. They were checking those boxes. So here we are with Pluto in Aquarius, and people are now being faced with the same thing. By the way, that was a moral dilemma. Theoretically, right? It was a moral dilemma. And so, like if you were somebody who was theoretically persecuted or a member of the so-called underclass, right? Somebody who had been marginalized, and all of a sudden you saw all this DEI stuff or DIE stuff, which was happening way before Trump got into office. They were laying the tracks for that way before Trump got into office. You look at that and say, this is my gravy train. Fuck it, I'm on it. Like Van Jones. You go back and listen to Van Jones at a certain point in time. He doesn't sound like the guy he is now. Van Jones made a career choice. That's Pluto and Capricorn. So Pluto, in a lot of ways, from the mundane perspective or the collective perspective, does impact the choices we make. Because Pluto's connected to things like power and resources. That's what Pluto's related to, power and resources. Go back to Pluto and Sagittarius, right? It's kind of the tail end of Clinton. What's happening there? Globalism. Sagittarius represents the globe and China and trade deals. And it's like, hell yeah, get me on board with that globalist shit. I'm a free fucking trader. I'm a liberal fucking tarian. Take away those tariffs. Take away all those China trade sanctions. I'm Pluto and Sagittarius all the way. People did that. People said, fuck Main Street. Get me on board. I'm going to sell shit to Walmart, right? Those are choices that were made. So Pluto is a really interesting demarcator for this stuff, right? So here we are now, Pluto and Aquarius, probably giving us the biggest choice of morality that we've ever faced in a lot of ways, right? Technology promises us amazing things. Think about it in some ways, right? Oh, you get this chip, man, you're going to be linked up to the mainframe. You get to speak all these different languages. You get a chip as a kid, and all of a sudden, your kid is speeding ahead of other people's kids. What do you think those parents are going to do? That's what Gattaca is all about, right? CRISPR technology. These are all moral choices, and they are going to be more front and center than ever before with Pluto and Aquarius. So yeah, now all of a sudden, we are questioning, and I'm not talking about morality like, oh, am I just going to spread my legs and be on OnlyFans or fans only, where the fuck? That's a moral choice as well, by the way. No, this is different, right? This is the choice of saying, I am an organic human to the best of my ability, and I choose to remain that way, while the rest of the race becomes, super cyborgs. But it will be tempting. Trust me, it will be very tempting, because what happens when these people demonstrate abilities that are supposedly set aside for the gods, right? So here we go. Again, this is from a collective level, right? This is from a collective level. This is from a mundane level. And we can see where Pluto, in a lot of ways, is also about temptation. It's the keys to the underworld. And there is magic in Pluto, and there's power in Pluto. And yeah, you can harness Pluto. You can, right? But it'll have its way with you first, so that you understand it, and you don't make the same fucking mistake 2 or 3 times, and you become a valuable steward over something so profound and deep and archetypal, right? And you address it, you move towards it with a lot of fucking clarity and awareness in your life. So again, this is what we're dealing with. This whole idea of morality is encapsulated in our times with Pluto and Aquarius. So, again, can we derive some kind of moral decision from this? Do we say no and retain our organic being, our analog selves, which I've talked about before? Or do we check that box, just like people checked that box in the mid-2000s and said, I'm on that train. I'm going to get paid. And I think for people, and I'm going to throw this out there, I do think for people who feel like they've been marginalized and left behind, people that feel like they have no theoretical future, they will make that choice. They will make that choice, and they will invest in any kind of augmentation that is available to them. And are we going to judge those people? And that's the other part, right? Because a lot of times with morality, we also get judgment. And what happens if one of your kids says, yeah, I want to get, Musk Link 3.0, Neuralink 3.0. What if they say they want that? What are you going to do as a parent? It's kind of like, they kind of set the stage here with the jab, didn't they? Which has its own relationship to a certain type of technology, right? And there really seemed to be a bit of a moral divide, even in that world, right? And where was Saturn? It was in Aquarius. What does Saturn do? Saturn's the great judge. It's the great judge. So there were people who were like, not going there, making a moral choice. You may say, well, that's a human choice. But the backdrop is astrological, isn't it? And I always find it interesting when we get into this discussion around sidereal versus Placidus. When I look at when Saturn went into Aquarius, right, as much as I'd like to say that was a sidereal moment. It wasn't. It wasn't. We were all experiencing the same thing simultaneously. That's Aquarius. We were one theoretical group, one planetary global matrix group, basically having the same experience at the same time, which was limiting. That is Aquarius. That to me was Placidus. And some people have asked me, well, do you think that the powers that be or the social engineers use astrology to run programs? Sure. Why not? Ronald Reagan had an astrologer. Barack Obama had an astrologer. I'd be surprised if Donald Trump didn't have an astrologer. So the answer to that would be yes. What system? Sidereal, Placidus? Probably Placidus. That's what I think. My 2 cents. So what about a practitioner with astrology? Is there a moral code built into astrology? So ISAR, which is the International Society of Astrological, whatever, right? Or ASAR, whatever it's called. They actually have like codes that astrologers need to follow if you're going to be a professional astrologer. And there are basic fundamental kind of moral codes that you would follow anyway. Like you don't talk about your clients to other people. It's between you and that person, right? That's a basic fundamental thing that even therapists are supposed to abide by. The other part would be to do your best to stay out of judgment with another person when you're working with them. And it can be very easy to be judgmental, right? It can be very, very easy, but it's best to stay out of it. Now you can have a perspective and you can push back and you can, delineate what might happen if they go down a certain path, right? But, inserting yourself into their lives and telling them that they should leave their husband or their wife and that they should sell everything, I think is a bit of a bridge too far. Maybe in some cases it might be the right thing to do. Maybe if that person is just completely stuck and frozen and what they really need is a sledgehammer, but that's few and far between. Right? So I do think that there is a moral code like built into how we communicate with other people through astrology, right? Like there is a moral code there. And if you are a practitioner, clearly there is a moral code that you kind of like. My moral code, I don't tell people if they're going to die or when they're going to die. And even if you see something, there's a language in there that as an astrologer, you have a responsibility to be able to tell that person in a way that they can hear it and not be fatalistic. What do you want to do? You want to send that person out? Go into the world? Oh my God, they said he's going to die next year. Oh shit, what am I going to do? You don't want to do that, right? You don't want it to, again, astrology may not necessarily have a moral code, but it's built into this. It is built into this. And I've just given you half a dozen circumstances or half a dozen items through astrology where these things come up. And through the touching the flame around it, right? Touching the flame around it, you will be transformed by it and you will develop a code as a result of it. That much I am sure. And it will be based on your own evolutionary journey and how you can respond to situations so that you show up. And there is a degree of morale, right? Morale and moral connected. And, we think of like morality like Jerry Falwell and, Tipper Gore and shit like that. But I think that we're at a point in time where we've this is just me personally, you may disagree with me, but we've gone too far, right? We have gone too far. And there are so many really messy lines and blurred boundaries and really dull edges in our world. And what's happened is that we have been inculcated to accept these things as just the way it is. It's just the way it is. The world is going to hell. And just accept it. It's just the way it is, right? Oh, these people are fill in the blank. And that is a byproduct of a demoralized society. Remember, morale and moral are connected, right? They're connected. So our goal here, at least as I see it, is to remoralize or to regain a sense of morale so that we can get up and get out of the bed at the beginning of the day, right? We can do that. And we have to practice this. You know, and morale is something that we share with others. We share it with others. You know, when a team plays really well, right? They have good morale. They believe in each other. They trust in each other. When an army or a unit is tactical and they have good morale. You know, they help each other up. They care for each other. You know, they don't enable each other. And this is really important. And again, I think it's built in the chart. I think that's what we're dealing with on an individual level. So we're dealing with one-to-one on a practitioner level, and it's what and how we evolve through the chart. So that ultimately we become individuated beings. And individuated beings can display any number of response, any given situation. I had a incident today on Twitter. It was one of those incidents, right? It was a funny incident. So this one guy chimes in. It's on this augmentation thread. And he got into, well, you know, there's, you know, the Catholics bilocate, like he's talking about Padre Pio. Catholics bilocate, Inuit shamans, they all have these kind of interesting abilities that have nothing to do with theoretical technology. I'm like, sure, I'll chime in on that. So I went in there and I said, well, you can add the Aboriginal people from Gondwana, you know, who could, you know, tap into the dream time. And I said, and it's our relationship with technology in many ways that's atrophied our ability to express these things, which is, I believe, to be true. And the guy called me a techno faggot, which I thought was funny. And so where do you go with that, right? Like, you don't even fucking know me. Like, is that how you talk to people when you don't know them? Just a little conversation. Could you imagine just talking about that, like, in line? And not that it would come up, but let's say it did. What are you, some kind of techno faggot? Like, do you really talk to people like that? So it's like, well, I don't know who that was meant for. It was meant for me. It's like this, right? Like, if somebody is blind, what happens? Well, your hearing and your sense of smell, right, and your sense of touch are heightened because you don't have access to that thing. That's what I was talking about. Like, it has nothing to do with being a techno faggot, right? It was just like, this is basic, you know. So why am I saying this? Because part of me was like, who the fuck are you talking to? Right? That kind of thing. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to go there. I'm just going to go here and tell them, like, well, this is it. This is what, you know, and usually what happens when you say something like that, most people just run away. Right? Like, I was, that, and I'm not trying to, like, put myself up on a fucking, after a while you figure out, like, this is the most sane way to get there. And every now and then we get triggered, and every now and then it's like, you know, let's turn on the flamethrower. And sometimes it's not a bad option. But that's what I mean about individuation, right? Like, you have a wide range of response mechanisms at your disposal, right? That's what I mean by being individuated. And understanding one's code, understanding human design. There's a code in human design, maybe even more so than astrology. Like, if you understand you're a projector and you got this going on and that going, there's a code there, right? And then you'd be able to live through that. And then theoretically, you know, you get to experience some degree of individuation and wholeness of self. This is what we're talking about here. So I do believe that there is an inherent morality in astrology. And let me give you another example. So let's say you're an astrologer or somebody knows about astrology and you abuse it. You can abuse anything. You can abuse anything, right? Anything. Anything is an instrument for abuse. So we'll talk about astrology as an instrument of abuse. I guarantee you at some point that she'll catch up with you. It'll totally catch up with you. Just like it'll catch up with you like when I had Pluto in my ascendant in Scorpio, I had a few things that caught up with me. And especially later on when I had Saturn going through my 12th house in Scorpio back in 2012. Oh, it caught up with me. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Then you realize, right? You realize that there are other people on the other side of your experience. And then you get to feel what they felt when things were going through, when I was going through. And that's exactly. So then, guess what? No, you're not going to do that again, are you? Didn't feel too good, did it? Right? So I do believe that if you're paying attention and you understand astrology, oh, yeah. Yeah. There is an inherent morality that you will learn from this fucking thing, right? There is an inherent morality here. So that what? You can be a better person. And don't we really want to be better people? And you may scoff at it. Say, no, we want to be better people. Why do we want to be better people? Because when we're better people, people around us get better. That's the bottom line, right? All boats rise. So we do want to be better people. We do want to understand our shortcomings. We want to find out where the shadow is. We want to figure out where our limitations are. We want to see where, we cast blame upon others instead of taking responsibility for ourselves. We want to understand why we're lazy or, why we're given certain things and, maybe we don't take advantage. All those things are important and they're all in the chart. They're all in your experience going around the wheel. And so does astrology provide the moral code for a person to live by? Inherently, I would say no. But can you discover one in your journey through the chart? And I would say 100% yes. And you will be a better person for it. You'll make better choices. You'll make better choices and the people around you will be the beneficiary of those. And then guess what? That has an effect, right? So if that person experiences the better aspects or the better side or the elevated aspects of you, right? What'll happen? Well, they'll pass it on to another person. And this is how we create change. This is the domino effect of change. So I was going to go into the octaves too, right? Because every sign has an octave. There's the low, the mid, and the high. The low, the mid, and the high. I don't have time to get into that tonight, but it's there. So the low octave is when you discover sort of the baser elements of a sign and what it connects to. But then the higher is with the refinement of the sign, right? And that's part of the evolutionary journey as well. And then guess what? Through that, you begin to create this refined self. And through the refined self, you come up with a code. And sometimes you got to let people have it between the eyes. You can't always, that's part of it, right? Sometimes just the way it is. Truth has its own morality. You'll find that in the chart as well. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about that. Let me see some of these comments. Be the change you want to see. Yes, I'd agree with that. Let's get some comments up here. Own your own mistakes, learn from experience and mistakes. Know when to intervene, know when to say I told you so. Better wait until I will show, so you give you receipts. There's some of that in there, right? Definitely. Sandra says, be the change you want to see. I couldn't agree more with that. Absolutely. 100%. How good could astrology be when most were nutters? Yeah, better grade of nut. I love that. I love that, Christine. That's awesome. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Was I going to discuss Michelle O tonight? Should I? Do I really want to? God. What's the headline? Is there a headline I'm missing out on here? She is Baphomet, isn't she? Is there any news here? Let's see. Oh, she won her second Grammy. How about that? Her second Grammy. Who knew? I had no idea. No, I'm not going to talk about her. No. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Linda L says, I find the normie POV is expressed with extra emotion when you know strong delivery is not necessary. I think there's some truth to that. Let's see what else we have. Linda L, once again, worst use of astrology is the normie interpretation. So few awake astrologers. It's a lot of bias. A lot of bias. I get it. Let's see who else we have here. Flamethrowers can be fun every once. I agree. I totally agree. Just make sure you're not standing in the brush when you light it up. Sometimes it's, sometimes it's a ball peen hammer, and sometimes it's a sledgehammer, and sometimes it's a feather. That's what being individuated is about. That you know when to use the tools, how to use the tools, and when. And you only get there through a code, understanding it. That's my 2 cents. Let's see. Glad this community is supporting each other. Well, you're a big part of it. You're a big part of it. Thank you for doing your job as well. Here we go. Axel's mom, no chips for Mike. He doesn't need it. Axel doesn't need any chips. Trust me on that. 2024 is supposed to get... Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I'm with you, Sam. I'm not going to talk about her. Tom says, I read that Michael Sugru passed away. If you haven't found his channel, check out his channel. This guy breaks down philosophers really, really well. I'm into it. Steve Electro. No, don't talk. I'm not going to talk about her. I promise. Rich J said, that's creepy. I imagine Robin putting up Christine's chat. This is the thing about Pluto and Aquarius. We are fucking connected, right? This is the thing I like about Pluto and Aquarius. Can I talk about this for a minute? Syncs, high strange. So I'll give you one from last week. This is a good one. Don't know how it happened, but we're not really supposed to, right? So I took my mother to go see, unfortunately, we have to, see a lawyer, right? And get all the stuff in writing. And part of the thing that came up was like being her medical advocate, executor, right? Power of attorney with doctors. So there was 2 options. There was leave it up to the physicians or leave it up to me. And so, got talked about and sorted it out with me. And I thought about Terry Schiavo. You guys remember Terry Schiavo? And how Terry Schiavo, back in, I think, what's that, 2005, was in this kind of functional coma. it really got my attention, this woman. And her husband just wanted her all the life support and everything pulled out of her. But she was communicating, and her parents wanted to keep her alive. And look, that thing was really fucking dark, if you ask me. And George Bush chimed in. I fucking hated George Bush. It's like, keep your little, MK Ultra skull and bones ass out of this. And of course, they pulled the plug on Terry Schiavo. I didn't like it. So I thought about that driving home, Terry Schiavo. And then later that day, I had somebody who reached out to me from Twitter, tried to get a hold of me. I said, just call me. So he called me, had a great conversation. And somewhere in the conversation, he brings up Terry Schiavo. He just referenced Terry Schiavo as kind of a reference point for being in a coma. Didn't reference her in the same context, but it's like, how the fuck did that happen? Right? I was just thinking about, randomly thinking about Terry Schiavo. And then moments later, this guy, and he did another thing too, but thinking about DNA a lot lately in genetics. And I thought to myself, man, there's got to be these traditions where people, like family books and family trees and stuff like that. But it's more than just that, more than just such and such be at such and such. But there were things connected to it, like other blood type or something, like kind of Mormon-esque in some ways, but not being Mormon-esque. You know what I'm saying? And I thought that, there had to be some families that did stuff like this so that they could understand the genetic potential of somebody. And then he brought up this word called seneschal. And I'm like, oh, I know a lot of words. And I've seen that word. So what? I've seen that. What does it mean? It's exactly what he was talking about. He was talking about these record keepers and families that keep these family books. And I've been thinking about that for like the last week, right? This whole idea of genetics and why people are predisposed to do certain things. Like, why does somebody crank out like 50 fucking novels? You know what I mean? Like somewhere inside that person, they got something that's like, right, and then hire people who will write your shit, So I've been thinking about that. Like Joan. Joan knew she was going to be a dentist from the first time. She said, what do you want to do when I grow up? I want to be a dentist. It's somewhere in there. Well, it's in the chart too, but it's somewhere in there, right? It's that genetic signal, and that people don't have any idea, but they just do it, right? And I find that shit fascinating. Anyway, let's talk a little bit about Pluto and Aquarius, because it's in the title here or in the show description. So just in the last week, we had Neuralink show up, and then we had the Apple Vision show up, right? Pluto and Aquarius is going to be the gift that just keeps on fucking giving. And it's going to go in that direction. But just when you think the cyborg army is upon us, it'll flip back the other way. And I'm so looking forward to this time, because it's going to be so unpredictable. Yeah, there are some patterns and things that we can pick up on, and yeah, they're going to be there, but it's so unpredictable. And I think that's really going to be our saving grace, is the unpredictability. And also this idea that, just like we had Rich J and Christine, this kind of, how would I call it? Well, for lack of a better term, we'll call it the global brain. But whenever we use global now, it's so loaded. We'll call it the global brain, or we'll call it the collective mind, and not a hive mind, but a kind of an astral neuro networking that we have been paving the way for. Like everything that we've been doing on the internet has some kind of remapping or repatterning with our consciousness. And so it just makes sense that what we're doing here in this realm would ultimately show up in real time. And we don't even need any hardware. We don't need the hardware. It's going to happen. we're going to start to have these bleed throughs of reality that'll be really interesting. And maybe for some people, it'll be shocking. You know, like when Roger Rabbit comes through the animation and comes into the film in real time, right? But I feel like that's going to happen, and we're not going to need these VR tools. It's going to be really unusual and not always easy to discern, like what's our mind or what's my mind and your brain and my brain. And as long as we don't, lose our marbles, it'll be really fucking interesting. And I don't think anybody has to have a patent and a placeholder on it. That's the other beautiful thing about it, right? The idea behind Aquarius is that, again, it's the the bright light model, right? Everybody's a bulb. Everybody shines, illuminates, makes it part of the picture, and that's what it's about. So I'm actually fairly optimistic, as much as people want to cast a dystopic vision upon this world. I'm fairly optimistic, right? I'm a sports fan, and when there is a real sporting contest, there are tides of momentum and waves of momentum, right, in a sporting contest that theoretically isn't fixed or rigged. And we're about ready for a momentum shift here. It's coming, right? The momentum shift is coming. And that doesn't mean it's going to be Pollyanna or fairy airy, because things can get and probably will get pretty hot, right? But just remember that momentum shift is on. You know why? I'll tell you why, in a large part. People have had a couple of years now to size up, like the Klaus Schwabs and Yuval Noah Hararis and the Tedros Adhanams and the Bill Gateses and even Elon Musk. These people are not that impressive. They are not that impressive. Remember that scene from The Wizard of Oz that I talked about? Pull the curtain back. The little guy from fucking Kansas, right? That's what we're dealing with here. That is what we're dealing with. And more people are waking up to this fact. They're waking up to the fact that, a lot of them are just toads. Now, I do believe that there are entities or whatever you want to call them that are not human, that are engaged in a much deeper dehumanization of our experience. And the whole idea is to just, basically wipe the dimension clean and move on to the next one. I do think that that's there. But a lot of the people that they've put in place to do their jobs are not very impressive. And the world is waking up to it. The world is waking up to it. So Pluto and Aquarius, going to be interesting. Already is. Let's talk about, I wanted to get into this this Gen A thing. Let's see if I can find this. I won't play the dog video again, I promise. Let me find this for you guys. Gotta find this. Let me see. There's this video of this teacher. I'm going to try and find it. I know a lot of you guys have seen it, but I got to find it anyway. Let me go to Twitter. You can always find this stuff on Twitter. Here it is. Okay. So I got to play this for you guys. Because this is some Pluto and Aquarius stuff right here, even though these are Gen A kids. So this is a teacher and her kids. Now, apparently, this is not a localized phenomenon. For whatever reason, all these young kids have fallen in love with Country Roads by John Denver. So this is just one example in a classroom where a teacher is talking about this. Or what? Well, if you haven't seen it, watch what happens next.
Why this song? It's as loud as it gets, so you guys have to be quiet. I'm so confused. I don't know, it was requested. What is happening right now?
Can I play that again? Let me play this again. This is a reminder that all is well in the universe. Okay? This is a reminder that we have these young people, these Pluto and Capricorn kids, who have found this song, which is all about going home, right? And theoretically, in this world, we've strayed about as far from fucking home as we have or can, right? We're not in Kansas anymore. Let me play it again.
Why this song? It's as loud as it gets, so you guys have to be quiet. I'm so confused. I don't know, it was requested. What is happening right now?
You know what I love about that too is the teacher just handles that like a champ. She's awesome, right? She's bemused and she's like, what the fuck is going on here? And then at the end, she gives him a little round of applause. I wanted to play that for you. Number one, to kind of demonstrate a quality of Generation A, which is Pluto and Capricorn. And number two, that's part of the Pluto and Aquarius theme, right? In as much as, oh, we got a Neuralink. Oh, we got goggles, right? Oh, we got all this weird high strain shit. Here's a classroom of kids. Knows the song by heart, requested the song, and they're not the only one. They're like a whole wave of kids across the country that love that song. That is Pluto and Aquarius, right? Just when you think you're hanging out on the the outer rings of I don't know. Does Uranus have rings now? But you know what I mean? Like just when you think you're out in the fucking twilight zone, you get a classroom of kids singing "Country Road" by John Denver. By the way, John Denver's a Capricorn. He was born. I think he was born New Year's Eve, which is the Joker in the playing card system. The only night for the Joker is John Denver. So he's even kind of an astrological cipher for that generation. I think we're in good hands. I think we're going to be okay. The only, well, it's not the only one, but the big issue that we have with these kids is to protect them. We just need to let them get to an age where they can start making their own decisions and not forcing our version of reality upon them and offering them up to science as some kind of fucking Frankenstein experiment, right? We have to let these kids get to that point where they can make their own choices. And I guarantee you they'll do quite well. And in fact, that's why they're going after them and trying to confuse them about their identities. Oh yeah. They're in the crosshairs because the Pluto and Capricorn kids come out of the chute getting ready to run the show. And they will displace a lot of people who think they have it figured out. Just wait till these kids start coming of age. Then they get through these trials and tribulations. We're in for a very, very interesting evolutionary development here on this planet, in this world. All right, I want to leave you with a high note. And it's 8:12, so we've been here for 2 hours and 12 minutes. Thanks for kind of playing with me with the intro. Just wanted to say hi to a bunch of people. I hope you liked tonight's show. If you want to get a reading, you can schedule that with me through my website, robertphoenix.com. If you'd like to buy me a cup of coffee, that's there as well. And I'll be back tomorrow night on Serious Sports. We got plenty to talk about. Man. So last week, just to give you a capper, me and my guy, Al Dog, were talking about, and I brought this up, that the week before the Super Bowl, when there are mishaps, or any time before the Super Bowl, usually start about a week, when there are mishaps leading up to the Super Bowl, it adversely affects the team that has the mishap. And unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes' father has been arrested for DUI for the third time. And that does not bode well for the Kansas City Chiefs this week. So anyway, we'll talk about that, the significance of that, and a lot more right here tomorrow night, Serious Sports. Come check it out. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for being here. Mods, thank you for all your help. You're the best. Take care, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night if you're into it. Bye for now.